We advocate for the repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults. We discuss the science, culture, and controversy about America's marijuana laws. We do not advocate or encourage any illegal activity and advise all listeners to learn their state and federal marijuana laws by visiting normal.org, NORML.org. Opinions and claims made by guests and advertisers of Normal Show Live are their own and do not necessarily reflect the philosophy and policies of Normal. Listener discretion is advised.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
From the promise of legalization.
And I think we need to rethink and decriminalize our marijuana laws.
To the agony of prohibition.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws presents Normal Show Live, Marijuana Nation. Now, here's your host, Normal's Outreach Coordinator, Radical Russ Belville.
Good afternoon, Tokers and Tokettes, and welcome. It is Tuesday, November 15th, 2011, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Thanks for joining us for today's show. All sorts of breaking news happening. We're just getting it in on the wires as I speak to you now. Bus in Thurston County, Washington, the Tacoma area. 2 in Olympia, 2 in Lacey, Washington, and 5th dispensary in Rochester, all being shut down, being raided right now by, looks like county authorities. We'll get more news on this when we get to our news segment right after this first break. Welcome to the show. Again, for those of you joining us, Cannabis Carrie is off this week. She's on vacation, so I'm handling all the news duties. We'll get to that Thurston County raid situation going on right after the first break, and we've got some other stories, including the Los Angeles Times looking at smaller cities in California that can't afford the lawsuits to fight medical marijuana dispensaries. We have some video from Minnesota of an 11-year-old boy who turned in his stepfather for his medical use of marijuana. We go back to the state of Georgia, where I just returned from, where 2 freshman lawmakers are planning to implement or to turn in a new law to to drug test for welfare, another one of these drug test for welfare laws. Crazy news about what teens will do to try to beat school drug testing, and an interesting study, and we'll talk to Dr. Mitch about this on tomorrow's show as well, but an interesting study that claims that children with higher IQ tend to end up using more drugs throughout their lifetime. Very interesting data there. Also on today's show, it is Electric Tuesday, but don't have a song from Cannabis Cure UK today. I'm going to keep going with music that we're bringing back to you from and this group on today's show called Sun-Dried Vibes. We've got music from their latest album, Give Thanks, with a song called Revolution. That's coming up at our 20 after break. Then at the half-past break, more video from my appearance there at the Atlanta Capitol Cannabis Reform Jam. Actually, we're going to be playing video from Paul Caldwell, longtime Yippie activist who also spoke there at the proceedings. Normally, we'd be doing Todd's Toker Topics today. Unfortunately, Todd can't be with us today, so we'll wait till I guess a few weeks from now when we get Todd back. But at the end of the show, we'll have time for a radical rant. I'm going to take a look at the contempt that President Obama has for marijuana voters, and some contempt by statewide activists as well for the marijuana voting public. A very interesting radical rant coming up on today's show. We are the voice of the marijuana nation, and in scheduling news, remember that next week and the week after will be our holiday vacation for Thanksgiving and for the Normal Key West Legal Seminar. So 2 weeks off starting next Monday. We'll be back on December, I believe it's the 5th, with our next news show. Stay tuned. The news is next.
This is Normal Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation.
The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. Please do not give up your precious liberties. There's nothing wrong with standing up for our constitutional rights, and in fact, it's the only way to honor the Constitution that gives us these precious rights. Treat law enforcement with respect, and respect the Constitution by standing up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, stand up for your rights by repeating, I respectfully invoke all of my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search or seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak with my attorney, Omar Figueroa. Omar Figueroa has more than a decade of experience in federal and California courts and graduated from Yale University, Stanford Law School, and Trial Lawyers College. Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at www.omarfigueroa.com.
You're listening to Normal Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Weedmaps.com. I'm Radical Russ from Normal. In my job as outreach coordinator, I travel every month, and when I'm on the road, I need a fast, accurate way to find the medical marijuana dispensaries in the area. So I turn to Weedmaps.com. Weedmaps.com has the best dispensary locator online or on your mobile device. Search by zip code or let Weedmaps find you, and in seconds you'll have the addresses, phone numbers, and customer service reviews for the medical marijuana dispensaries in the local area. Weedmaps.com also has a section devoted to helping you find a doctor who understands and recommends medical marijuana under your state's law. You can even check prices on the Medical Marijuana Stock Exchange. Coming soon, you'll even be able to find the listings of normal attorneys and chapters, local head shops and grow shops, and the best weed-friendly businesses. Weedmaps.com has the information you need to be an informed cannabis consumer. Visit Weedmaps.com today, a proud sponsor of the Normal Network.
Inhaling deeply of the sacred smoke.
Medical marijuana, industrial hemp, consumer cannabis. It's time for this week's Normal News with Cannabis Carey.
Cannabis Carey is on vacation. I'm Radical Russ with your Normal News. According to the Olympian.com in Washington State, cops bust 5 marijuana dispensaries in Thurston County. The Thurston County Narcotics Task Force served search warrants at 5 medicinal marijuana dispensaries Tuesday morning and shut them down, according to a police spokesperson. The 5 dispensaries included 2 in Olympia, the Olympia Patient Resource Center and the Healing Center, 2 dispensaries in Lacey, Cannabis Outreach Services at 4709 Lacey Boulevard and Lacey Cross were also shut down. A Rochester marijuana dispensary, Triple D's, is the 5th dispensary that was shut down Tuesday. Thurston County Sheriff's Lieutenant Greg Elwin said Tuesday that so far no one has been arrested, but the operators and employees of the dispensary are being detained and questioned, he said. Elwin said that police are not targeting medical patients with legitimate green cards because they are legally purchasing marijuana. A vast majority are legitimately seeking out marijuana for their conditions, he said. However, Elwin said, criminal charges are likely forthcoming to those individuals who are illegally selling and distributing marijuana from those dispensaries. Nobody's been arrested yet, he said. These dispensaries are operating illegally and outside the law, he said. It's our job to enforce these laws, and that's what we're doing today. The Tuesday busts were a culmination of a 5-month investigation by the task force with assistance from the Washington State Patrol, Elwin said. As of about noon, no marijuana had been seized from the dispensaries. One of the goals of the investigation will be to determine where the dispensaries are getting their marijuana, Elwin said. How did it get here and where did it come from, said Elwin when asked to describe what investigators are looking for. He added that there were similar busts Tuesday in Pierce and King counties. So it appears, though, the Washington state dispensary system that some people had thought was legal under state law, that it got vetoed by, line item vetoed by Governor Gregoire. All of this mess here is still not cleared up. We've still got people trying to supply medical marijuana to patients, and we've got law enforcement agencies that are trying to take them down for doing so. We'll keep you filled in on the details as more are forthcoming. From the Los Angeles Times, cities seek an antidote to medical marijuana. 3 years ago, Garden Grove enacted a ban on medical marijuana dispensaries, but the city's crackdown didn't go the way the law officials had planned. Dealing with one marijuana case cost $200,000 in attorney's fees, leaving city leaders with sticker shock. Then they began to wonder whether their ban would even withstand legal challenge given the contradictory case law. So Garden Grove stopped enforcing its ban and this summer required dispensaries to register with the city. Now there are about 60 pot shops in Garden Grove selling products with names like Porn Star and Super Lemon Haze. City manager Matt Fertall says he believes it's more shops per capita than any other city in California. Quote, everybody is just so frustrated with this, Fertall said. The state, he noted, allows medical marijuana, but doesn't give clear direction on how cities and counties should regulate it. Federal law says it's illegal under all circumstances. Aw, gee, break out the tiny violin. I feel so bad for these poor cities that just can't muster enough money to hire the attorneys to go to court, to have to fight against people's rights to get their medical use of cannabis. Gee, I wonder if you could tell that story to the thousands of Californians who get busted on marijuana charges, medical or not, every year, and then are subjected to the limitless resources of the prosecuting attorneys, the district attorneys that fight them, people that end up having to cop to pleas to crimes they did not commit, end up doing probation, peeing in a cup, or even jail time and fines because they can't afford the limitless resources to fight for their rights in court. And now you want a city here to tell me you want me to feel bad for them because they can't mount the resources here? What about the people, the thousands of people who end up in civil forfeiture, who actually have the resources to fight in court, but their money and property get taken from them in the civil proceeding, so they can't afford a lawyer in the criminal proceeding? I'm sorry, Garden Grove, you're not going to get much sympathy from me. In other sad news in Georgia from SavannahNow.com, Georgia legislators seeking drug tests for welfare applicants. Yes, once again. Yeah, a pair of freshman lawmakers announced Tuesday they are jointly introducing a bill in the House and Senate to require applicants for welfare to take drug tests at their own expense. One of the authors, Representative Jason Spencer, a Republican of Woodbine, said a similar law in Florida reduced welfare applications by 48%. The state saved $2 million in 5 months, even after reimbursing the roughly 1 in 4 applicants who passed the test. Under Spencer's measure, House Bill 668, Georgia taxpayers would reimburse the roughly $27 cost of a drug test to applicants who pass. Those who fail would be barred from getting cash benefits from the Temporary Assistance for Needy's Family program for 1 month. Flunking a second time results in a 3-month ban, and 3 or more failures makes an applicant ineligible for a year. The lawmaker said, quote, Georgia taxpayers have a vested interest in making sure their hard-earned tax dollars are not being used to subsidize drug addiction, end quote. Well, interesting couple of observations I have on this one. First of all, he's talking about how Florida reduced welfare applications by 48%, as if that statistic is something good. As if somehow proposing the drug test suddenly meant half the people who were poor and needy who needed this assistance suddenly didn't need the assistance anymore. No, they were still just as poor. Their kids are still hungry and malnourished. They still need help to maintain a home lest they become homeless. But we're going to go ahead and let them be homeless, let their kids starve because they got popped for, peeing dirty on a pot test. And the other thing about this too, a lawmaker who is paid by taxpayer dollars insisting that taxpayer dollars should never subsidize drug use, huh? So when is the proposal to drug test all the Georgia state representatives coming in? And the Georgia judges and the Georgia cops and firefighters and the teachers, all of these people, the guys working on the pothole crew, fixing potholes in Georgia. When are we going to start drug testing all of them? How about the prison guards and all of the prison wardens, all those guys that are getting paid by taxpayer dollars? And let's not forget, it's not just government workers who are getting taxpayers' dollars that might end up subsidizing drug abuse. Let's talk about the CEOs of companies that get taxpayer funds, that get Georgia state taxpayer relief or any sort of tax benefits or tax breaks. Coca-Cola, Turner Broadcasting, we're looking at you. Any sort of tax breaks these Georgia companies might get, they ought to be drug tested as well. Hell, if we're trying to make sure that nobody is using any taxpayer funds to subsidize drug use, why is it always just the poor, the sickest, the people on the fringes of society that we have to punish with these mandatory drug tests? More crazy stories coming out of here. We've got this story on video from myfox9.com. Fox Twin Cities in, of course, Twin Cities, St. Paul, and Minneapolis, Minnesota, of a boy aged 11 who reported his stepdad for medical marijuana use. We're going to go to that video here and just give you the news right here from myfox9 in Minneapolis.
An 11-year-old says enough is enough and tells his mom he can't take the smell of marijuana smoke anymore. And when she did nothing, he says he went to his father, who doesn't live with them, who called police. And Maury, talk about tough, having to confront your own mother over drugs. Tell us about it.
Well, Randy, I spoke to everybody involved tonight, including the boy's mother, who works for Dakota County Community Corrections. She says it's the boy's stepfather who uses marijuana for medical reasons. And while that's not legal in Minnesota, she says she keeps it away from her children.
When we first approached the Siebenollers' house in Ravenna Township, we didn't think we'd get much of an explanation of the charges against them.
Hi, my name is Maury Glover. I'm a reporter from Fox 9.
But after opening a few doors, we soon started to hear their side of the story.
The story in the news is not true. Absolutely not true.
Prosecutors say Heidi Siebenollers' 11-year-old son, Luke, complained to his father that he often smells marijuana in the house they share with his mother's current husband, Mark. He said that sometimes he's unable to escape the smell without going outside. Investigators say Luke even took a picture of the drug and texted it to his father, and when
having some sort of problem with the video feed here, we'll try to get this back on for you. Having some problems from the Fox 9 connection, so let's see if I can restart that.
An 11-year-old
texted it to his father, and when police searched the property, they found nearly 8 pounds of marijuana in 2 Walmart shopping bags in his parents' master bedroom.
Having that much marijuana is not good, for one. It's not good for kids. It's not good to have that distributed.
I smoke marijuana, and I am not ashamed to say it.
Even though medical marijuana isn't legal in Minnesota, Mark Siebenoller says he smokes it to treat a traumatic brain injury he suffered in his early 20s. But he says he keeps it away from their children. And his wife says she didn't even know there was any marijuana in the house.
I live in this house, and I've never smelled marijuana in this house. It makes me sick.
But prosecutors say Heidi Siebenoller, who's a probation officer for Dakota County Community Corrections, should know firsthand how dangerous drugs can be, especially around children.
We're not willing to discount this just because people say, well, it's marijuana. In some states, it's not looked upon as that serious. This amount of marijuana and the high-grade marijuana we see these days makes this a serious offense.
Now, prosecutors say Mark Siebenoller also took investigators to a grow operation he had started on a nearby farm field. Heidi Siebenoller is charged with aiding and abetting fifth-degree possession of marijuana. She's on leave from her job with Dakota County Community Corrections. Randy, back to you.
You know, the sad thing about stories like this is when the kids are involved in a situation like this, they get all this miseducation through DARE, through all of these government propagandas, and they just think that, you know, it might be as simple as, I don't like that smell, I'll go tell someone, and they'll tell them to stop, and it'll be all over. They don't know the consequences. The kids don't know the consequences of reporting 8 pounds of marijuana. They don't know that that means mommy and daddy or mommy and stepdaddy might be thrown in prison, that they'll have to go to a foster care or might have to go back with his dad, or who knows what's going to happen in this situation. It just infuriates me every time we set up in this society a situation where kids are expected to narc on their parents. And one final story here, an interesting study that we'll talk about a little bit tomorrow with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. High IQ linked to drug abuse. This from CNN. The Just Say No generation was often told by parents and teachers that intelligent people didn't use drugs. Turns out, the adults may have been wrong. A new British study finds children with high IQs are more likely to use drugs as adults than people who score low on IQ tests as children. The data come from the 1970 British cohort study, which has been following thousands of people over decades. The kids' IQs were tested at the ages of 5, 10, and 16. The study also asked about drug use and looked at education and other socioeconomic factors. Then, when participants turned 30, they were asked whether they had used drugs such as marijuana, cocaine, and heroin in the past year. Researchers discovered men with high childhood IQs were up to 2 times more likely to use illegal drugs than their lower scoring counterparts. Girls with high IQs were more than 3 times likely to have been using drugs as adults. A high IQ is defined as a score between 107 and 158. An average IQ is 100. The study appears in the Journal of Epidemiology and Community Health. Well, my take on this would be, are we talking drugs or marijuana? Because if it's marijuana, certainly someone having a higher IQ might realize the research and the facts behind marijuana versus alcohol or other means of recreation and decide to make the intelligent, safer choice to use the non-toxic recreational alternative. All right, folks, we got to take a break. We're going to catch up on the break here and see if I can get more news on those raids up in Washington State. But coming up next is your music, Daily Tokra Tunes from Sun-Dried Vibes.
It's 20 after the hour, and we have to take a short break, if you know what I mean. Please support these sponsors who support Normal Show Live.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would sell you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
Starfish Designs, makers of the original Gandalf.
I'm Radical Russ, and when I want to relax, I always have my 17-inch long original Gandalf from Starfish Designs nearby. The hand-blown borosilicate glass is strong and easy to clean, and the design is sleek and sophisticated. Starfish Designs are available from Bend, Oregon at a glass retailer near you. For locations, call 541-788-GLASS. That's 541-788-4527.
Russ Belville. Yeah, he's a scurvy dog.
Normal stands for Responsible Adult Cannabis Use. If cannabis use is causing problems in your life, consider taking a break or seeking medical assistance. Consider ceasing cannabis use if you have a family history of mental illness. Don't drive or operate heavy machinery while impaired by cannabis use. Cannabis use is not without risks, even though the risks are far less than those posed by legal drugs.
Hi, this is Alan St. Pierre, Executive Director of Normal. This year, the Drug Czar's office has a $60 million budget for advertising their Reefer Madness propaganda. We here at Normal don't have that kind of money, but we've got 2 weapons for fighting back. Your donations and the truth. Please, make a donation to Normal so we can continue to expand this podcast and our other media campaigns. Even a donation of $4.20 can help. Visit us on the web at norml.org or call toll-free 888-67-NORMAL, NORML. Thank you for caring and sharing.
It's time for your daily Tokra Tunes, the best in 420 friendly music from all genres that uplifts, entertains, and informs the public. Today we bring you tunes for Electric Tuesday, our segment featuring the best of modern electric music in the genres of dance, new age, house, and experimental. If you'd like to submit your song to be played on Normal Show Live, send it to us at stash@normal.org. Now here's some more great independent marijuana music for today's Daily Tokra Tunes.
All right, folks, we're going to get to the Tokra Tunes in just a second. Sun-Dried Vibe from their new album, Give Thanks. But we're continuing on this breaking news on the Washington State dispensary raids. Northwest Cable News is reporting federal agents raiding at least half a dozen medical marijuana dispensaries in the Puget Sound area, shutting them down. Some of the dispensaries are located in Graham, Parkland, Spanaway, and the town of Summit, said Pierce County Sheriff Detective Ed Troyer. According to Troyer, the raids in Pierce County were conducted entirely by the Drug Enforcement Administration. And then news out of MyFox Spokane, so on the eastern side of the state, DEA, MyFox Spokane is reporting on the Seattle area raids, in King, Pierce, and Thurston counties. DEA federal, local, and state agents raided a number of marijuana dispensaries Tuesday under federal law, which prohibits owners to distribute, sell, and use medical marijuana. Let's see, we're getting three Pierce County dispensaries, one in Spanaway, two in Puyallup, and two in Seattle. Thurston County raids as well. We're continuing on our coverage of this, and we will have more updated news when we get into hour 2 in our Tokra Talk Radio. So those of you listening live here in the 1 p.m. Pacific hour on the Normal Network, stay tuned for hour 2. We will bring you more live coverage. I will see if I can get some folks on the phone as well, work some of my contacts during the break here, see if we can get some phone calls in and get some reporting live there from the Seattle area. Again, the news now, DEA, local, and other agencies involved in multiple dispensary raids in the Pacific Northwest in the state of Washington, Pierce County, King County, and Thurston County. I want to return to our daily Tokra Tunes for today. I know it's Electric Tuesday, but again, I'm back from Atlanta, and there's so many great bands in Atlanta and, of course, from Athens, Georgia. And this is one of those bands, I believe, from Athens, Sun-Dried Vibes, that appeared there and donated their time to promote marijuana legalization in the state of Georgia. We've got their album Give Thanks, which features, and they're a trio, Zach Fowler on guitar and vocals, Evan Tyler on bass, and Alex Winchester on drums. And let me say, by the way, all three fantastic musicians, but specifically the drummer. This drummer is knocked out. I got to tell you, good drumming, Alex Winchester there. Mastered. Oh, I'm sorry, they're out of Charlotte, South Carolina. My apologies, not from the Atlanta area. Charlotte, South Carolina. That's right. They drove down from South Carolina. They're active with Columbia Normal in South Carolina. And so we are going to play music for them. You can find them at reverbnation.com/sundriedvibes or email them for booking at sundriedvibesmusic@gmail.com from the Charleston, South Carolina area. This is Sun-Dried Vibes from their album Give Thanks, and we're going to play the song Revolution from Sun-Dried Vibes. Thanks, guys, for the tunes, and we hope you enjoy it for your daily Tokra Tunes.
Searching for something right, but as the dark steals the light, I'm consumed by the ever-pressing fright of the sight of this world spinning out of control. Nothing we can do here but just let go of doubts and inhibitions, modern day superstitions. Y'all got to be living, you got to be living, got to feel driven, you got to be steals the light, my mind won't let me turn and fight what I know I might be losing if I don't trust. And if I keep standing in this rain, I'm bound to rust. But with the heart of a lion, I keep moving west, straight for Mount Zion. I'm moving along, yeah, I'm keeping it strong, yeah, I'm moving along.
Want a copy of that song for your iPod? Check out the daily Tokra Tunes at the Stash blog by surfing to stash.normal.org and choosing Media, and then Tokra Tunes from the main menu. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back after a word from these 420 friendly sponsors. Wait a minute. This is Internet radio. There are no dials here.
Ever wonder how often to change your bong water? The most effective method for baking pot brownies? The best destinations for a ganja getaway? How to hide herb in your car? Whether to grow your own? How precisely to legalize it? Or how something as wonderful as marijuana ever got to be illegal in the first place? Finally, you can find all these answers and much more in the official High Times Pot Smoker's Handbook, featuring 420 things to do when you're stoned. Since 1974, High Times magazine has covered marijuana in all its aspects and wonders, from cultivation to legalization to the herb's enduring and exalted place in popular culture. Packed with inside information, the official High Times Pot Smoker's Handbook rolls all of this collected wisdom together into a single indispensable ganja guide, including an entertaining look at marijuana's history, profiles of herb-friendly travel destinations and festivals, favorite potluck recipes from the High Times staff, smoking skills, advocacy and activism, essential marijuana movies and songs, profiles of famous cannabis strains, comprehensive growing information, celebrity endorsements, and much more. This is truly, finally, the ultimate guide to green living.
Oh, gnarly!
What are you people? On dope?
USVI Normal go broke down barrier. Herb is medicine to broke down barrier. Boost the economy and broke down barrier. It's helping other states broke down barrier. Cannabis for legalized to broke down barrier. Join and speak your voice broke down barrier. We gonna change the law broke down barrier. We got to educate broke down barrier. Yeah, this is Nayora, bigging up USVI Normal. Working to legalize cannabis, for the whole of the Virgin Islands.
USVI Normal is a non-profit organization working to legalize cannabis for the use by the industries and responsible adults. Do your part. Join USVI Normal. Register to vote. Pass the word. Voice your opinion. You can change the law. Contact us for more information at 340-244-9179. You can also visit our website at www.usvinorml.org.
The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws is the largest grassroots drug law reform organization in America. So every Monday we visit with the activists in drug law reform who are fighting for our freedom.
Welcome back, everybody. Got to fix that old intro. That's no longer valuable, but it's no longer correct. That's all right. It's time for some political activism. And speaking of activism, I'm working on trying to get some folks on the line in Washington State to give us updates on the breaking news, multiple DEA and local raids of dispensaries in Washington State, Thurston County, Pierce County, and King County. Reports of 5 in Thurston County, reports of a few others in those other 2 counties. I don't have any hard and fast numbers yet. Still trying to collect the information. It's breaking right now. Got calls out to Douglas Hyatt, one of our Normal Legal Committee attorneys, our Washington Normal chapter. Also trying to track down some folks from the American Civil Liberties Union to see if we can get some comment from them. In the meantime, we'll go ahead with our regularly scheduled programming, which is I was at the Atlanta Capitol Cannabis Reform Jam this weekend, and it was speakers and activism and signs and protest and music, all to try to bring awareness to the cause of legalizing marijuana in the state of Georgia. And one of the speakers there was a veteran of the activism in marijuana reform, going all the way back to the 60s. Paul Caldwell, a friend of Dana Beals and Jerry Rubens and all of the great yippies of the 60s. He was there in Atlanta to speak to the folks at the Capitol. We bring you that video now. Well, we're having some problems with the audio on this one. Hold on a moment. Let's see what's going on. Yeah, apparently some audio problems. All right, we're going to have to take a short break, and when we come back, we hope we have that interview ready for you. This is Normal Show Live.
This is Normal Show Live.
We're locking up people that take a couple of puffs of marijuana, and the next thing you know, they got 10 years. They've got mandatory sentences.
Barry Hydro and Jonathan Weaver and Tanya from Normal and so many other people that keep the movement alive here in Georgia. It's been a long war. I started in '71 with the first smoke-in Athens, Georgia, Student Senate. They were having a referendum on whether marijuana should be legal in 1971, which, by the way, won 56% in favor of legalization in 1971, 40 years ago. So the Student Senate was supposed to pass on the referendum, and we had a little smoke-in in their lobby. This is before I actually had met any hippies and knew what a smoke-in was. But they banned the Student Senate from meeting there for the next 3 years, which was some kind of input. So then I got busted in South Texas with 90 pounds of pot, which kind of set my head straight on this reform idea. And I don't know if you know, back then the Vietnam War was raging, and the Nixon Intercept was started in 1971, which busted thousands and thousands of youths across the country for marijuana. Although the people of America had already been suffering under the laws in the country, across the country, severely. I mean, in Georgia, the penalty was 10 to life, Texas, 2 to life. And so I became involved, and I went to the July 4th smoke-in 1974 and 75 and met all the yippies there. They're doing the July 4th protest in front of the White House in Lafayette Park. This year to be the 44th year in front of the White House. And so I met a lot of people there at the July 4th smoke-in, including Ed Rosenthal, Dana Beale, who invented the smoke-in, Keith Strout from Normal, and others, Gatewood Galbraith from Kentucky. And I was coming up with an idea back then to do marijuana futures and fundraising for marijuana organizations at the time. And so we founded International Marijuana Wholesalers and Distributors and sold marijuana futures in T-shirts, which helped pay for the white papers for Jack Arrar and helped fund the OMI and CMI efforts in 1980. Camp was formed in 1977. We organized for the first time for our event at Hurt Park right over here with 1,000 demonstrators for the first Atlanta smoke-in. And subsequent to that, the next year we did the first Gainesville smoke-in and the first Tallahassee, Florida smoke-in. And I started participating with the yippies in New York. And I'm giving you this little history background because I'm going to get into why we're here, why it's so important, because I'm not here to rant and rave as I normally do and yell at the governor directly. I want to talk to y'all personally about why it's such a long war and why we can succeed. It's not about division, although there have been division with the many marijuana groups over the years over philosophy on how to do it, how to implement it, how's the most successful way to have it implemented. But it's about union and coalition and unity. And the perseverance of each of you as an individual, and how much each one of your individual efforts count. It's not about quantity, it's about quality, and it's about how you get with your friends and those you know and make a stand. Stand up. And stand up and stay true to your principles and stay true to your cause. And when you talk to people, bring it up. So that's what I did. We started fundraising, and I started participating with the July 4th Coalition, which I was privileged to organize for 5 years, and got to develop a lot of great friends around the country. Keith Stroop among them. Dana Beale invented the smoke-in 1968. And Rob Campy, who was head of California Normal and went on to institute the MPP, Marijuana Policy Project. And since then, thousands of groups have established themselves all over the country and all over the world, which is manifest with the Million Marijuana March each spring, the first weekend in May, or that first week in May, which, by the way, is at globalcannabismarch.com. And you can participate. We have one here every year, usually following a 420 event, which I understand is in planning. So it's not about who you know, it's about what you know. educate yourself and educate your friends and your associates about what's going on around you, what's going on in your state, what's going on in your region, what's going on nationally. 40 years now, I don't think there's a city hall or a state capitol that marijuana reformers haven't demonstrated in. And as evident here with so many organizations trying to develop a cohesive lobbying effort in the state of Georgia to implement laws that are already on the books. As you know, marijuana legislation was passed in 1981 that implemented medical marijuana in Georgia in 1981, 30 years ago. And they sat on their hands either out of fear or ignorance or just plain shameful opposition to benefit patients and to propagate a study why medical marijuana is beneficial. It was one of the first states to pass medical marijuana, yet we're still waiting. This last year, the state legislature and the state medical board is implementing the Patient Qualification Review Board, which reviews the doctors and patients for a study for cancer, chemotherapy, wasting, and glaucoma. Up to now, they only have 3 doctors. They need 6, and only 3 people have applied. So if you know a doctor or a pharmacist or somebody in the medical field that would like to join this Patient Qualification Review Board and have medical marijuana in Georgia, educate yourself on MMNA 1981 and try to lobby in your own individual fashion for medical marijuana in Georgia, a study, which incidentally the feds have come around now studying the Georgia program because they're trying to figure out a way to eliminate the 14 states that have passed recommendation in dispensaries by instituting a medical marijuana tablet and medical program to be licensed, maybe through licensing their own patents that the Human Health and Human Resources has made for cannabinoids. The federal government actually has patents for marijuana, and have it instituted through pharmacies and prescriptions through doctors, and eliminating all the dispensaries. So I want to tell you a little bit about why medical marijuana. I was in the first meeting to decide to move for medical marijuana heavily. It was attended by Dennis Perone, who I've known since 1971. I was actually selling pot to California then, and he had the big top there. And Steve D'Angelo, who now has Harborside, the biggest dispensary in the country, started working with us when he was 18, with a company I started, International Marijuana. And they're trying to institute a program that would make medical marijuana out of the realm of smoking, and institute a program that you have to really be sick to get a license or a prescription for marijuana. It's more than that. As Dennis Perone once told me, all uses of marijuana are medical. And we know this from experience because we know we become depressed, or we need to calm down, or there's so many myriad other illnesses that benefit from use of medical marijuana. But it's more than that. We have a right to choose our medicine. We have a right to choose our doctors to prescribe what we want. It's an unalienable right that we're able to treat ourselves. And I wouldn't let any government entity or police officer or anybody tell you how you're going to treat your particular illness, or somebody that's sick or has cancer. Don't stop using cannabis because they say it's illegal or immoral or whatever. What was immoral is to allow people with illnesses to suffer and degrade and die without treatment by using cannabis. That's what's shameful.
That's Paul Caldwell at the Capitol Cannabis Reform Jam. We're going to cut this short because we have an incoming call from our Skype line, I believe coming from Washington State, to help update us on what's going on with the raids there. 206 area code, you're on the air. Are you still there? Hello, 206. Let's try. I'll try calling them back. We'll see if we can get them on the air here. Difficult here when we're working live, trying to get some breaking news for you. Are you there, caller?
New Approach Washington. Please leave me a message including your name and telephone number.
Okay, we tried. That was for trying to reach Allison Holcomb at the New Approach Washington, the I-502 offices. They're trying to legalize...
Rated everyone 10 and up.
they're trying to legalize with the I-502 initiative. So I was hoping to get comment from her. Apparently not available. We're still call out to Douglas Hyatt. I've also called out to the folks at Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. We're hoping to get one of the former Seattle police chiefs like Norm Stamper to comment on this. Otherwise, we might have to wait for another day. But we will continue to bring this breaking news. Again, for those of you joining us late, we've got breaking news of law enforcement raids on the dispensaries in Washington State, in Thurston, King, and Pierce counties, Washington. At least 5 or more, a handful, maybe up to 10, are being raided at this moment by federal, state, and local authorities. We'll bring you more news as it's available. We return you now to Paul Caldwell at the Atlanta Cannabis Capital Reform Jam.
On the patients, that it would be hard on the people providing as caregivers medical marijuana to the patients. And so it has. But we knew that the government would come down hard on it eventually. And I and many others are amazed that we got as far as we did, 14 states in the District of Columbia legalizing medical marijuana. And now the federal government has taken the initiative to try to close them down after so many years of success, after the Proposition 215 put forth by Dennis Perone in California. They're now trying to, like I say, make medical marijuana a prescription drug. But we do have a right to medical marijuana, our choice of doctors and our prescriptions. But more than that, we have a right to get high on whatever we want, with respect to the people around us so that we don't endanger anybody. And we have a right to keep children away from marijuana by not allowing a black market corruption run by cartels in Mexico and Colombia and around the world. We have responsibility as adults to maintain our use of marijuana in a viable, legal way between consenting adults, to grow our own, to transfer without commercial. And this is a right that we all know deep down that we have. It started with the Harrison Act, the Uniform Narcotics Act in 1918, but got worse when Harry Anslinger lobbied Congress in 1937. I'm not going to go over the facts. But what I'm going to say is that the medical establishment was prohibited from even testifying at the 1937 hearings that made marijuana illegal nationally in the United States. They didn't want to hear from the doctors. They didn't want to hear from the patients. And I'm telling you, there was hundreds of pharmaceutical preparations with cannabis, you all well know it, before that for hundreds of years and even thousands of years before that. But what it's going to take to change law is perseverance, knowing the facts, being solid, act like responsible citizens, lobby, vote, go get registered, pick out the candidates, express to your organizations you're working with to find out who's in favor of medical marijuana in Georgia. And by the way, when it passed in 1980 in Georgia, it passed almost unanimously. It was signed into law by then the governor, Zell Miller, a bunch of them, very conservative Democratic Party in the state of Georgia, saw their fellow legislators with cancer wasting away from chemotherapy and wanted to help. There wasn't very much opposition then. But the bureaucrats got in there, thwarted its success, thwarted its implementation, and now we're here to tell you that Georgia needs to implement the MMNA as soon as possible and relieve the suffering of medical patients. We need to expand the scope of this study from cancer, chemotherapy, and glaucoma to PTSD, to the hundreds of illnesses now that we know can benefit from medical marijuana. But let's get back again. We know there's an inherent right to use a plant that God gave us. No man can take asunder. No law can stop. It's my right to smoke a joint and get high. It's my right to grow a plant for pot so I can get high. And it's my right to transfer it to my friends that don't grow. Anyway, it's been a long war. I hear a lot of people today, young ones that don't know, come along lately, no offense, who say marijuana's going to be legal in 5 years. And I smile. I love their enthusiasm and their naivete. There's billions against us. But we have millions of people with rational thought and who have a lot of friends who support them. So all I can say is persevere. Know the facts. Get organized.
Hey, this is Willie Nelson for Normal. And if you're one of the 26 million Americans who smoked marijuana last year, you need to get involved in the drive to legalize marijuana. We need your help to stop the senseless arrest of more than 800,000 Americans each year on marijuana charges. Together, we can end marijuana prohibition and stop the arrests of marijuana smokers. To learn what you can do to help, contact Normal at norml.org or call toll-free 888-67-NORMAL.
This is Normal Show Live.
We're locking up people that take a couple of puffs of marijuana, and the next thing you know, they got 10 years. They got mandatory sentences, and these judges just say, they throw up their hands and say, nothing we can do. There's mandatory sentences. We've got to take a look at what we're considering crimes.
When the Reverend Pat Robertson from television's The 700 Club
Criminalizing marijuana, criminalizing the possession of a few ounces of pot and that kind of thing. I mean, it's just
makes more sense on the marijuana issue than the president, the Congress, and the Supreme Court.
It's costing us a fortune, and it's ruining young people. The young people go into prisons, they come out, they go in as youths, and they come out as hardened criminals, and it's not a good thing.
You know we're winning.
Hey, this is John Papa. You're listening to The Normal Show Live.
Hear Cannabis Times Radio every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific with replays at 11 p.m. Pacific. Also catch morning replays every Thursday at 5 a.m. Pacific and weekend replays every Sunday at 7 a.m. Pacific right here on the Normal Network.
You want answers? I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take them all. Answers.
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want the truth.
And you have offended a Shaolin temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Well, if there's any contempt for marijuana voters out there, it's our own damn fault. You know, I was looking at this recent article in the San Francisco Chronicle, and there's a little paragraph in here that I found particularly contempt. Here it goes. Nationwide, support to legalize marijuana reached a record 50% in a Gallup poll last month, including 62% support in the 18 to 29-year-old demographic, which Obama needs to help secure his re-election. But political analysts say it is unlikely that medical can do much to dent Obama's strong support in California. Who are they going to vote for? Romney? Asked Mark Kleiman, a professor of public policy at UCLA, who is a former Justice Department analyst and prolific author on marijuana issues. Is that contempt, like that Obama can just toss our votes aside, do whatever he wants with regard to medical marijuana, because what are you going to do, vote for a Republican? Yeah. Who knows what might happen with a Republican in office instead of President Obama? Why, we might have DEA raids on medical cannabis dispensaries and the revocation of gun rights for legal medical marijuana patients, the suspension of commerce and banking and punitive taxation for medical marijuana businesses, and threats to seize the dispensary properties from landlords, and the refusal to act on scientific requests for and actively blocking the research on medical cannabis, or even paving the way for the cannabinoid pharmaceuticalization monopoly for big pharma, or maybe a complete disdain and ignore all of our legalizations. Really? I mean, unless the eventual GOP nominee is promoting a death penalty for two ounces of pot, I don't see how it can get much worse. By the way, that death penalty for 2 ounces of pot, that was actually proposed by Newt Gingrich in 1997. When it comes to voters and presidential, Ron Paul has been a better advocate for that issue than almost any Democrat, and Governor Gary Johnson is actively courting marijuana-using voters at hempfests and expos. Though they lack a serious shot at the nomination, according to most political observers, they do harness a lot of that youthful energy and enthusiasm that was once Obama's 2008 bread and butter. Kleiman's false idea that it's Obama or Romney, it kind of ignores the third option, which is none of the above. And I think that's what you're going to find from a lot of marijuana supporters come election day. Now, the article goes on to talk about how 16 other states where medical cannabis is legal include swing states like Michigan and Colorado, and points out how Stevie D'Angelo, a former Obama contributor, is going to be working against Obama of Colorado. It's not just the medical swing state issue. I mean, Wisconsin, Florida, and Ohio are all very important swing states that have had very strong pushes for medical marijuana, only to be rebuffed by their legislators. Who knows that the medical marijuana vote there couldn't states in favor of a GOP candidate? We'll hear who supported Obama in 2008 because they thought he was making promises to leave the states alone on medical cannabis. They feel betrayed. I see a big backlash coming here, but it's this calculus. You got to figure that Obama knows this. Obama knows he's pissing off the base when it comes to medical marijuana. And you got to figure his calculus is that there's more votes to be gained and more money to be made by going against medical cannabis than he loses in donations and votes from medical cannabis. I mean, you see a similar attitude going on in Washington State, where the legalization proponents of I-502, they wanted to put in this 5 nanogram DUID thing, this zero tolerance for under 21. They knew that's going to cause them votes. That's going to cost them votes among educated marijuana consumers like myself, educated reformers that know that zero tolerance never works and that per se DUID is unscientific. They know they're going to lose our votes for that. But they got to do the calculus. They got to figure, well, we'll probably gain more votes and make more money if we put in this 5 nanogram thing and take care of the worries of the soccer moms that are afraid of they're going to be stoned drivers out there on the roads. So this contempt they have for arts is only possible if we are not voting as a bloc, if we are not mobilizing the power of 25 million annual cannabis consumers in this country, if we are not mobilizing the power of 17 million monthly cannabis consumers in this country to say enough, we will no longer vote for anyone who wants to treat us like a criminal. Just because you say you're going to legalize, that doesn't mean you get our vote. But if you will not, and if all dances marijuana consumers, they would have to court our vote, like they have to court the gay vote, the black vote, the Latino vote, any other, the gun rights vote, any other big major American voting bloc out there. We can be that larger. The NRA only has 4 million members. There's 1 million daily cannabis consumers in this country. I'm sick and tired of us being taken for granted, for our votes being taken for granted by Democrats who think that we won't vote Republican because they won't do anything. Well, gee, Democrats, you've made the drug war just as bad. Less people were arrested during the Reagan-Bush eras than compared to the Clinton era. There's no longer a Democrat, Republican, left-right choice for. It's time for us to take a stand. Never again vote for anyone. Criminal. Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned for our talk more about. Take your calls at 971-533-1111. For everyone here at the Normal Foundation, thanks for joining us. And until next time, take care of each other.
We love the earth.
Voice of the Marijuana Nation.
Take it on one more time. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow